Welcome to the Profitable Farmer podcast, where we share stories and tips to help you run a better farming business and create your very own freedom farm. If you're looking to work smarter and not harder in your farm business, welcome. You're in the right place.
G'day and welcome once again to Profitable Farmer. I realised just the other day that I've done over 100 episodes on Profitable Farmer after Robbo's initial 30, so a little milestone, but gosh, I reflect that it's been a wonderful journey and such a privilege to connect and share the stories of so many really significant people doing incredible things in our industry, and also to speak with people outside of our industry like Jim Gall in our last episode. So many wonderful insights to share, but nice to stop for a moment and reflect on the Profitable Farmer journey this week. I actually feel like this next conversation that we're about to have is so relevant and so valuable and so important to so many of us. And it's the topic around the fact that our identity is not our bank account. So when we arrive into tough seasons, or commodity prices are down, or we hit a drought or a flood, so often our sense of self and our identity is completely attached to the success of the farms that we run and the bank balance that we're achieving. And I actually think that that's dangerous, and it's actually not accurate, because we are so much more than that. This is a topic that Tracy, Secombe, our Director of Wellbeing and Coaching at Farm Owners Academy, and our General Directorship at FOA talk about a lot, Tracy. And it's wonderful to have you back with us at Profitable Farmer, and I'm really excited to look into why it is that so many of us focus on what we do as our definition of who we are, why that's not accurate, and how we need to sort of create some separation and take it a different approach to how we see ourselves and value ourselves as humans. Welcome.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to be back. Yeah, it's just a topic that comes up for me so often in my conversations with people, in all industries, but particularly in the farming community. And just recently, the reason we were talking about this is because one business owner was explaining his current situation with the yield. It hadn't been a great year and it was affecting his cash flow. And I had watched him climb to great heights with self-confidence and belief in himself in the previous 2 years. And it was incredible to watch how profoundly these results were impacting his self-confidence and his sense of self. And he was starting to, think, I can't do this, and after talking to him for a while, he reignited with his passion and realizes, this is what I love, this is what I want to do. And I think there was some fear creeping in that if he failed, then what would he do? Because he identifies so much with his identity being what it is that he does. So I am a farmer through and through, please don't make me do anything else. And I think it's wonderful to do what you love, but I think it's important to understand that what we do is not who we are.
But just to take that a bit further, and it's a great example, how often do you see farmers and farming families attach significant amounts of their identity and their sense of self to what they do?
I think that it's the majority at this stage. I'm definitely seeing a shift, but at the moment it would still be the majority of people. And I think that possibly the reason it's more so in the farming community is because of the history. So, for example, I was a physiotherapist and now I'm a coach, and my parents were neither of those things. So there isn't sort of any sense of history or obligation that I need to carry on the farm, the family name and be what my parents did, do the thing that my parents did. And so I think that that's why it's even more common, because there's a sense of responsibility that they keep doing what their father did or their mother did or grandfather, etc. And I also think that because the whole family is there, there's not a real separation often between their roles. So they're a father or a mother and a farmer and, you know, a wife or husband, but they're all in the same environment, you know, because you live where you work. And so I think it's so intertwined that we really identify with these roles rather than who we are. I think that people confuse the word identity with roles. And if you think about it as a role, it makes it easier for you to be able to accept changes in roles as our business changes, you know, as we move up the ladder and bring the next generation in, if we are evolving in our role rather than feeling like I'm losing my identity as a farmer because I'm not driving the tractor anymore, for example.
What can happen if we do attach our identity to the success of the farm and then we hit challenging times?
Well, the problem with that is that we can't maintain our sense of confidence. So we are relying on things going well all the time for us to feel good about ourselves. And in fact, it's most important to feel good about yourself when times are tough, because then the decisions are even more paramount than when things are going well. So, you know, as we always say for people who are joining the Platinum Mastermind, if you've been lucky with, you know, good seasons and good weather, then you haven't really tested your model until you face those challenges. And so that's the opportunity to step up. So if you wobble right when those challenges come and lose your confidence in yourself because you're taking it personally, then you're not in the best headspace for you to be able to make really good decisions and take actions that are going to give you good results. I love a quote by Wallace Wattles from The Science of Getting Rich. He says, "A man's way of doing things is the direct result of the way he thinks about things." So it's not so much about what you do, but it's the way that you think and feel about yourself and your confidence in yourself that is going to affect the outcome of what it is that you do. So it's really important for you to be able to understand, you know, what your identity really is in times like challenging ones.
I watched a TED talk the other day, Tracy, that spoke about stress. And if we perceive and think about stress to be negative, it will be on us, and even our life expectancy is shortened than those who look at stress and see it as an opportunity and a positive and have a positive attitude towards that same stress. It's not dissimilar to what you're saying. It's our attitude towards our reality, which is more important than reality itself.
Absolutely. And I think when you develop that growth mindset and you embrace a challenge and say, this is for me, I don't exactly know how yet, but this is an opportunity for me to learn new skills, learn new ways of doing things, because what I've been doing in the past isn't necessarily going to work with these current conditions. And so it's always an opportunity.
Tracy, what would you say, just as an extension of that, to someone who might be in their second or third year of drought, where it's a prolonged underperformance of their business, and that self-critique and that attachment to the outcome is extended? And I think also of some of our Platinum Mastermind members that have had enduring and significant floods over recent years. What would you say to them about how they need to manage that connection between the farm's performance and their self-confidence and their sense of self?
Yeah, perfect question, because I've been helping lots of those people and encouraging them. And what I've observed them doing, which has been really effective, is coming back to what they can control. So I think that we can feel very fearful and very unsafe if we focus on the things that we can't control, like flooding, for example, or drought. And then we come back to, what is it that I can do anything about? And then we focus on that and we become very, you know, connected to that so that we can do what we can do well, and not putting so much attention onto the things that are out of our control. And Particularly the thing that we can control is our perception of what's happening, what is going well. So that's definitely got our attention because it has such a huge impact on us. But there are always things to be grateful for, no matter what's happening in our lives and how devastating it can feel. If we come back to, we all have our health, for example, if that's the case, we're together as a family. And often I see families get closer during these challenges because they have to rally together and support each other. And it's a real positive outcome that comes from those challenging times.
Thank you. And yeah, an extension of that is eyesight and arms and fingers and feet, and I can walk. There's just so much to be grateful for that in those challenging times that we can call on just to help remember just how fortunate we are.
Yeah, and I think that it's easier to be grateful if we separate us from the issue, because it's when we make it personal, and rather than saying this is not the way I wanted it to go, we say I am a failure. So we just have to be careful that we don't construe what's happening to a description of us and who we are. And that's what I was watching with this fellow who was feeling down about himself, is he was taking it personally rather than understanding this is business, this is the game, there will be ups and downs, and I'm here to learn how to navigate this, and I'll get better and better at these skills as I stay focused on that.
Tracy, what tips have you got for us around how to see the bigger picture and shift our identity to something different and perhaps bigger than I am a farmer?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is that you're not a farmer per se, even though that is a common statement, and we all use that language. Farming, or the tasks of farming, is what you do. So I would say that you are not what you do. You are not what your skills are. You are you. And when you look up the definition of identity, identity is actually your identification, which is, your name and your address and proving who you are. So, I think that we're much more than that as well. And what I think in terms of who you are, it's actually who you are being. So if you think about how you might describe someone, rather than saying, oh, they're a farmer, you might say they are kind, or they're funny, or, they're helpful, or they're encouraging. And when you start to think of yourself in those ways, then you realize that you can actually improve those things, because you might want to become kinder. You might want to become more present, for example. You might notice that you're irritable, or you're angry quite often. And so when you recognize those traits that you have, then you get some control back, because now you're choosing who you want to be. And I love looking at it like that, because then it's something that's always in progress. And when you come back to how we confuse identity with roles, then you can also see that roles will change. So you can change who you're being, in terms of an emotional state or a personality trait. And also your role will change, as children grow up. I mean, if we kept treating the farmer son that works with us like we did when he was 2, it wouldn't be appreciated. But you can see how we don't grow out of those roles sometimes if we don't consciously do it, and understand that those roles and the way we show up can change, and we can choose those. We can choose that change.
Thanks, Tracy. I'd like to make the point, and there's an amazing high-performance coach. His name's Ben Crowe, and he is the coach to Ash Barty and the Richmond football team and so many other high performers in business and in sport. And I listened to an amazing interview with him with Michael Hooper, who's captain of the Wallabies and has been. He's the youngest ever captain of the Wallabies. I think he started when he was 22 as captain. And it was incredible to sort of get a sense of why Michael Hooper hit a wall and left the Wallabies a few years ago. in the lead up to the World Cup. It was overwhelming. And what Ben Crowe coached Michael Hooper through was for him to realise that he wasn't just a rugby player and an elite rugby player, that his identity was far greater than that. To your point, the qualities that he had and the values that he upheld, but then also, in addition, the other roles that he played as father and friend and son and uncle and community member and all of those things. So is it also important to give more weight and more mass to some of those other roles that we play in our lives? It's just fascinating for me that this is a really important and high performance conversation. And even the most elite sporting people and CEOs on the planet looking at this with their coaches. How important is it to sort of to give weight and give time and priority to the other parts of our lives and the other roles that we play?
Absolutely. I think that we need the balance. When we do the Wheel of Life, with our members, it's really interesting to see what's missing in that. And often it will be health, often it will be, family time, because a great proportion is business. And I get that. As business owners, it's our baby, and we can live and breathe it. And I certainly did not have the balance right about 7 years ago. But when we get balance, then we can really show up as our best selves, and we can really create better communication, better relationships, because we're giving more importance to those other parts of our lives. So there's so much more to us than what we do, what our career is. When I gave up I sold my physiotherapy business, my husband asked if I was going to keep up my registration. And I said, no, I used to do physiotherapy and now I'm doing coaching, and it's a new thing that I want to do. And I just think that if our self-worth is attached to what we do, then we're going to be out of control with our self-worth, because it can go up and down. There are so many other factors that are going to impact that we can't control.
Thanks, Tracy. The Wheel of Life, just for those who haven't seen it or completed it, it's a wonderful exercise where you draw a circle on a page and you break that circle into 8 quadrants, so like 8 pieces of a pie. And around it, put in each quadrant the different parts of life that are important to you. So career is one quadrant, finance can be another one, friendships, family, community, health, spirituality can be one. But fill in each of those quadrants with an area of life that is important to you, that describes those roles that you play or those parts of life that are important to you. And then if 10 is at the outside of the pie and 0 is in the middle, how content are you with that part of your life right now? And if you go through and look at it, work your way around the circle and rate yourself out of 10 on where you are in each of those quadrants, you can get a sense of how well balanced you are across all of those areas. So often farming or business is getting all of our time and attention at the expense of some of those other components. And so whereas coaches, what we focus on, Tracy, and I'll get you to speak to this in a minute, is we help people make sure that the wheel spins first so that there are no gadunks. And so if you're giving yourself an 8 out of 10 on farming, but family is 2 out of 10 and fitness is 1 out of 10, then we need to focus in on a few of those other areas to build those out with positive change so that we can get balance and get the wheel spinning. How does that process help people, Tracy? And what's your comment on the importance of taking that time to take stock around the wheel of life?
Well, it reminds me of a conversation I had not very long ago when somebody became aware that they don't have any hobbies. So they had put all of their effort into farming their entire lives, and they're getting to that point where the children are, in his words, trying to push him out. And, they really want him to be able to go off and enjoy his retirement. But because he didn't have that balanced wheel all those years, he's now going, what am I going to do with my time? And I think that that's when people feel lost. They feel like this loss of identity because they're identifying with one quadrant of that wheel rather than, you know, all of the other areas. So I think that the sooner the better that you get that balance in your life, that's going to really serve you throughout your life, but particularly when you get to that stage that it's time for you to start handing over to somebody else. You know, start the succession plan as soon as you start, you know, have an idea of what the finish line looks like rather than just continuing on the way you always have. There's no point in having lots of money in the bank if you don't have any health left to enjoy it. So it's really important, or any relationships left because you've ignored everybody. So it's really important for us to remember what we value. I spoke to another guy last week who highly valued health, and when I drilled down, he wasn't doing anything to reflect that as a value. I said, this is one of your values and you're not doing anything towards your health. And it was a real wake-up call for him. So yeah, it's really important.
So I love Brian Tracy's comment that we feel good about ourselves to the degree to which we're living life true to our values. So important, to your point, Tracy, to list out our values and get them really clear, and then make sure we're setting up our days, our weeks, our months, our years with a diary or a run sheet that reflects that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the other reasons that comes to mind that people get really stuck in this whole identity of I'm a farmer is really connected to what they think other people will think. So, you know, all the farmers around them, you know, just keep farming until they can't anymore. And so they've kind of set up this unrealistic expectation of themselves that that's just what you do. And it was the same with the lady that I was talking to who came from off-farm paid work back home to work with her husband on the farm. And then she just felt really awkward whenever anybody in town would say, you know, what are you doing with yourself? She didn't know how to answer. It was so easy for her to say, oh, I'm a teacher at the school. And it was so awkward to say, oh, she kind of played it down and said, I'm helping my husband on the farm, you know, rather than saying, you know, some sort of purpose, like the two of us are creating systems in the business so that we can go on more holidays, you know, like actually sharing it that way rather than feeling like you have to have this label that other people respect in some way.
Let's just explore this a little further. There are some moments in time, if you like, as you've described, where our identity shifts. So let's explore those. The retiring farmer and farming family that are transitioning away from the farm as the next generation comes through into some form of retirement or active retirement. What do you observe there, and what tips have you got for that 68-year-old who's had a life in farming and is now making that transition?
Yeah. So what a lot of the family members will say to me is he just can't let go. And first of all, I have compassion for that because I understand that if that has been your thing that lights you up, you know, if you've loved that for years, you know, it's understandable that there is some sort of regret to be able to let that go. But I think that it's important for you to realize that it doesn't have to be that. So what I would say to somebody like that is ask yourself, what is it that you would enjoy about that? You know, why do you love it? Because it's transferable then. Then it doesn't have to be exactly the same task. So for example, if you just love sitting on the tractor, why do you love sitting on the tractor? Well, it might be that, you know, you listen to a good podcast while you're doing it. You know, you love being in nature. You love being outside. You know, you love seeing the result, you know, after you've been doing whatever it is that you're doing. And then you say, well, how else could I get that same satisfaction? And you will find other ways to be outside, to be in nature, to see the results, you know, if you're still involved in the farm in some other way. So I think it's really about exploring the why and the purpose behind it so that you can continue to have that why and that purpose, because absolutely to stay alive, you need a reason to get out of bed. And if you don't find something else, you know, I really have witnessed this with people that they don't live long because we have to have some sort of purpose, and you need to really be able to find that again. And I also think that it's lovely to look at the opportunity that you're providing the next generation. You know, even at Farm Owners Academy, as directors, as we sort of, you know, leverage ourselves, we train up new people to come in behind us and start to take on some of the tasks that we've done in the past. And that's so exciting, like to be able to witness that, to witness giving somebody else the opportunity. And I think there is that opportunity for a 68-year-old to be handing that over to the next generation. And if it's not your family, you know, the people you've employed, the team that you have.
I agree, Tracy. To find brightness in the new chapter that's in front of you, I think is just so important. I know our local golf course is just so fortunate to have about 6 or 8 retired farmers now as the greenskeepers, just, you know, transforming and looking after that golf course. And I know that a lot of those men and women that have come from farms and are now sort of active in that sort of a community project feel a whole new sense of satisfaction as they sort of embark on that as a new project that's in nature, that's using their hands, that's improving the environment and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And often you can become a mentor, like you've got so much experience, you know, and it's wonderful to be able to pass that on. And, you know, I don't believe in necessarily ceasing work. You know, I can't imagine it at this point. But I think that it's important to always check in and say, am I the best person to be doing this? You know, when you're part of a business and it's not just you, is there someone that could be doing this better than me? So that you make the decisions for the business. But equally, you know, how could I grow by taking on something new and something different, you know, and that can be a hobby or, you know, some other way of being involved in your business.
Yeah, I guess what I reflect on, as you mentioned, as we sort of transition in our roles at Farm Owners Academy, is that when you let go of something, you don't lose anything. You actually gain so much. You know, just seeing the team, I think we're a team of 10 coaches now. Tracy, it used to be you and Westy and Cheryl, and I jumped in there for a good little while. But you then get to mentor that team and step back in and do that whenever you want. And it's the same in farming. You can let go of the responsibility of overseeing the cropping enterprise or the sheep enterprise and build out a team to do that for you. You don't actually lose anything. You can still turn up at lamb marking and sowing and sit on a header if you want for a few hours. You can still do as much or as little as that as you like. But the privilege of building out team to do that for you and to have the freedom that it can be done without you, for me, that far outweighs the mindset that we're in when that is our identity.
Yeah, and I think if you embrace that it's normal progression, that it's normal to outgrow something, hand that over to the next person, and then make space for the next thing that you're going to grow into. That's what I've really realised. When I've handed over tasks, it creates this space and then a new opportunity comes and I get to grow. I don't think that we ever need to stop growing. I think we're here to grow all the way to the end. And so, you know, whether you're 68 or 88, you know, there's still an opportunity to learn and do new things.
Tracy, what about the transition of someone who has had the identity of being a farmer, and we challenge them to embrace the identity of being the CEO of a successful farm? That transition from I'm a technician to I'm actually an entrepreneur and the CEO of a significant business. What advice would you have for people wrestling with, and I know a lot of our members are wrestling with that shift in identity?
Yes, I love this question because I see it so often and work with it so often. So first of all, I would take the weight away from the word CEO. I think it freaks people out and they think they're not good enough and they're not capable. The other day on one of my conversations with Tracy sessions with our members, I said, let's just call them caps. You wear the blue cap, they wear the red cap, they wear the yellow cap. And each person that has their cap on the org chart has a responsibility, a list of roles and responsibilities, and they're just tasks that go under their cap. And you choose them based on what you're good at, what you want to become good at, you know, what you enjoy, and what you're ready for. And then that way you can ease yourself into it, because the whole thought of jumping from being a technician to being a CEO feels really daunting and really overwhelming. Where if you realize that it's a gradual process, I'm going to delegate this task that is technical, and I'm going to introduce this task, which is strategy. And then gradually you find yourself making this transition, or always doing a combination. Some people just love being able to get outside. So they're always, I think you do, I think there's always something that you do that's still technical because of the love of it. And then the majority of the time is running the business. But we're so good at that at Farm Owners Academy. We're revisiting the job descriptions and the org chart all the time. We check in as directors and say, are you still loving what you're doing? Is there anything new you want to do? Is there anything you want to delegate? And so then it's always a work in progress. And I think that takes the weight away from it, and it's not so scary.
Perfect. Thanks, Tracy. Now, what about for the people that have the identity as I'm just a farmer's wife? I think this is real, in that there are a lot of women in industry that see themselves, as you say, coming home, letting go of a professional career and real success elsewhere to turn up, and they identify as just the farmer's wife. I think at Farm Owners, we see the role that they play and have the opportunity to play in the business significant, but how would you have them consider and perhaps shift their identity?
Yeah, such a great question. So I think that the teacher's story was a really valid one, because it was so obvious when one of her students appreciated her support. They would give her a hug or give her a gift or give her a card, and the same with the parents. And then they come home and they feel like there's no thanks, no thanks for the meal that they cook for the family, or no thanks for the help that they're giving out on the farm. Now, that's not always the case, but I think that we can all be guilty of that. When we're family, we sort of take it for granted, and it's quite different to being employed outside of the family home. So I think that as a family, if we can have that discussion and all be encouraging and grateful to each other, for what we contribute. The second thing that I see is, again, a lack of self-confidence, because it's new. So I knew how to do this. I was a professional out here in this role, and now I'm coming back, and there is just so much for me to learn to be able to get my head around the part that I'm going to play in the business. I was talking to a couple of weeks ago, and it was great because he asked the question. He said, how can I teach my wife in a better way how to do the technical tasks? Because he was very aware that he wasn't effective through his communication, and he had an expectation of her to just be able to learn it straight away, but he also expected her to do it his way, which was just do this. And she came from a physiotherapy background, and she was used to understanding the why. She was like, but explain to me why I'm doing it. And so communication is so important, so that when somebody comes home to, be home with the husband's business, that the communication is really, really important, so that you understand what kind of learning style your wife has, so that you're inducting her, but also to be open to her fresh ideas. There's nothing like new eyes on a business that you've been looking at day in and day out. And then, your wife comes home and she sees all these other things. You want to be open-minded to new ideas. And if you have that thought, that won't work, because just quieten it and stay open, and just, agree to look at everything and put everything on the table.
I had a meeting the other day, Tracy, with a couple who have been off farm and had a really successful career in construction, both of them, and they've come home to the family farm only recently. And I just encourage them not to discount the strength of the skills that they bring, and to back that the professional lens through which they're reviewing and assessing the business that they're coming into is just so valuable, and just to back their conviction around how they're feeling toward the business. I think it's true for men that are coming into their wives' businesses and vice versa. What about the role that, or how they identify in the role. I see people just say, oh, I just do the books for Bill's farm or whatever, when the alternative would to say that I'm a director of a successful farming business and I'm responsible for the finances.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're husband and wife and it's your business, you know, you can say that, you know, we run a ... whatever the enterprise is together, you know. And it's interesting about the wording because people are really worried about how they're going to be interpreted. And so I would just say, forget about that. You know, what feels good to you? You know, I met a lady on Saturday night who I hadn't met before. And I'm at the age where people say to each other, do you still work? So, which makes me laugh. Anyway, she asked me that and I said, yes. And she goes, what do you do? And I said, I help farmers improve their well-being. It's my purpose. You know, I explained it based on what lights me up, what I'm excited about. I could have said, I'm the owner of a company, I'm the director of a company, but that's what I do. That's what I care about. So I think it's personal, and I think that it should feel good to you to be able to say what you do. And I know it doesn't feel good when you say, I just help out with the books. It sounds like, you know, you're very uninspired by it, and perhaps you are, and perhaps that's a discussion you need to have, because that's the other thing that I'm often saying when I'm talking to farmers' wives is that if they've come home to do the books for free, that we really are encouraged that everybody has a paid position, and if they're not the best person for a job, outsource that and you do the work that inspires you and uses your talents and skills.
Which might be the HR piece or, you know, the business management piece, or
Yeah.
it's so important, isn't it, to put people in their genius or have people playing from a place of feeling like they're in their genius. And so again, don't discount the value that you bring. I think Absolutely. It's just so important. What about then for the young couple who are about to have their first child and have that shift in identity from, you know, being perhaps driven farmers or driven professionals and career people to having to make that shift to putting family and parenting as a priority?
Such a great question, because it's so important that that is the time that you think about it. Sometimes you don't think about it until the child comes, and then you realize that life doesn't just go on. Nobody can really warn you about that. You really need to be prepared for that and realize that there will be a commitment of time, you know, full time, more than full time, in the middle of the night, you know, sometimes 24 hours time, of one of the parents or both of the parents or a third person, you know, so it might be paid help to help look after the child or a grandparent, but you need to really plan that out, and you don't just keep doing the full job that you've been doing and add parenting, because that's what I tried to do. So I was running my own physiotherapy company when I fell pregnant, took my laptop to the hospital. I was completely deluded and thought that life would go on and I'd just keep running this business and have this child as well. And obviously it doesn't work that way. And I think that it's such a precious time. All of my children are adults now, and you don't get it back. And so you want to make sure that you choose how much time each of you want to spend with the child, and you start preparing for that. You know, get extra staff if you need and if you can, or scale back if you can't pay for staff and you need to manage it yourself. But don't just act like nothing's going to change and just wing it once it happens.
We did the same thing. I had my business, Jane had her physiotherapy practice, and Jimmy was in a cot, or the crib under the physio bed or under my desk, and that was fine until he started crawling.
Yeah, exactly.
We left the planning for that a little bit too late. What about letting it be okay to be a mum and not a career person, or be a dad and not a busy farmer? How do you let people let that be okay?
When you realize that it's the most important job in the world, you know, the person that is spending time with a baby and then a child is the biggest influence on them. And, you know, you want that to be positive as our members are learning that the state that we're in now, the way we show up, is very much related to the conditioning we had when we were growing up. And so, you know, if you want to be the person that influences your child, then you want to have that input. And it doesn't have to be full time, but if it is full time, you've just got to realize that it should be a paid job. It's far more important than what we get paid for. You know, we are helping sculpt someone and allowing them to develop into who they're going to become as an adult. So I just think that you probably need to listen to podcasts and read books that really, really affirm what a powerful and important position it is to be a parent, and to never, ever say, I'm just a stay-at-home parent, because it's the most important job in the world. And it goes in the blink of an eye. It doesn't feel like it when you're in the middle of it, but it does when they don't need you anymore, which happens quicker than you think. And, you know, for a lot of farmers, kids are going off to boarding school in year 7. So it's a short time that you have them. You know, you've become an empty nester very, very quickly with young children.
Yeah.
And you want to make the most of it while they're at home.
Absolutely. Tracy, we talk about the success formula in life being be times do equals have. And you talk about the fact that we're not what we do, and we're not even what we have. Can you help us with that formula? And I'd love for you, if you could, to speak to the power of using affirmations as a tool to define who it is that we want to be and to start living that now.
Yeah. So if I use the example of someone that says, I'm a farmer, you could say, I, you know, do X, Y, Z, which is what you do, because that truthfully is the case. That's what you spend your time doing. And who you are is who you are being, which is where the be, do, have comes from. So who you're being in any moment is how you would describe someone. So, you know, at the moment, perhaps we're being informative, we're being interested, we're being helpful, you know, and it's our intention. Our intention is that the people that listen to this will gain something from it, and it will help them in their daily lives. So when you start to think like that, it's much more exciting, because it's like, who do I want to be in this relationship? Who do I want to be when I'm teaching somebody how to do this job? How do I want to feel, which is so closely linked to who we're being, when I'm sitting in this tractor, or when I'm looking at my numbers? Because if we are sitting there and we're being someone who feels like we don't know enough, or we're lacking confidence, or, you know, we're being fearful, then we're not going to make good decisions. We're not going to be the best at what we're doing. So that's really what Wallace Wattles was saying, is that success is not about what you do, but it's about the way you do it. And what he means by that is how you're feeling when you do it. And so, you know, what I'm teaching both with Farmers Academy and with Soul Pleaser is feel good, and then, you know, make how you feel your priority. Because when you feel good, you show up as a better husband or wife, a better parent, a better boss, you know, a better everything, because of the energy that people can feel when they're around you. And that's why it's so important to focus on who you're being rather than what you're doing. And you of course will focus on what you're doing, but it doesn't define you. That's always going to be fluid and changing over time.
And how can affirmations help in that process of building out our identity to be something more meaningful?
Yeah, I think that when we say I am, and whatever comes next, does it feel good, and is it what we would choose? You know, so I always say to people, if you say an affirmation that you really don't believe, it won't work. So it has to be something that's believable. So if you feel like you're kind, but you don't remind yourself enough, you could absolutely say, I'm kind, I'm caring, you know, I'm a good listener. If you know that you're not a good listener, you could say, I am determined to get better at listening. You know, I want to be a better listener. You know, these statements are so powerful, because what we do is a result of what we think, and that gives us our results. So we have to think differently first. And the thoughts that we think now are on repeat. There are so many thoughts that we think over and over again. And so if you're thinking ones that serve you, then you want to reinforce them. But if you're thinking ones like, I'm no good at this, or I can't have any time off, or I can never get home in time for dinner, or I can't find good people to work on my farm, you're going to get that. You're just going to get that, because they're the thoughts that you keep thinking, and your actions are going to demonstrate those thoughts, which then give you the results that you expect. So, new statements like, I've got a great team, I'm a great leader, because remember, we attract into our business a reflection of who we're being. So become all of the characteristics that you'd like to see in your team.
How important is it to write those down and bring them into reality, rather than just having them as verbal only? Do you see value in getting that the definition of who it is I'm striving to become, or how it is that I want to be, on paper, so that you can connect with it with frequency?
Absolutely. It's been shown that we are aware of what's in our peripheral vision without even reading it. So if you even have a list up in your office or in your shed or on your tractor or wherever you're going to see it, I know a lot of people do the toilet door, you have to go there. But even if you're not consciously reading it, just because it's in your peripheral vision, is going in. So it's really powerful to have it written down and posted up in lots of different places. It's also really powerful to record it. I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable about this. They're like, oh, I don't want to listen to my voice. You will get used to it. But I have changed so many things in my life by recording statements that I wanted to be true at the time, and listening to it on loop, and those things have come true. And I've become more and more the person that I want to be. And I know that this is an ongoing process, and it will always continue. And the best opportunity to notice who you'd like to become, if you're not sure, if you're listening to this and you think, I don't know who I want to be, the next time you notice yourself being a way that you know you don't want to be, or a way that you don't like, then flip it. Like if you're short with someone, you might say, I want to be patient. I'm becoming more patient. I am choosing to practice patience. Imagine how your life would change if you went from being irritable to patient. You give up because you can't do it. I never give up. I'm someone that always keeps going. There is another way. I just keep pivoting. Those sort of statements, become that person. That's the opportunity for us to just continue to become.
Thank you, Tracy. I think this is just such a powerful consideration. I think, to your point, that if we leave our thoughts unchecked, it's highly likely that some of those thoughts that we have about how we feel about ourselves might not be serving us. If we can take time to stop and reflect on who it is we want to be, and who it is that we're striving to become, and who it is when we're at our best, beyond the farm and in all areas of life. If we can make the time to commit that to a journal or to writing, and make it the best statement and the most powerful pep talk for us that we can, and then have frequency with that. So connect with that often, and really feel in, as you say, to each of the statements that are within that. For me, that's been incredibly powerful over my journey. I stumbled upon this concept, I think it was in 2007, when Robbo was my business coach. And it was one of the first things that he taught me was the identity iceberg. And I went to work on this. And then since then, I've always had an affirmation statement, and I've reviewed it at least annually, probably every quarter really, and just polished it and refined it. But it's amazing when you do that, how it can set you up to be at your best in the moment, and open to opportunity. And it's amazing when you do set down the intention of becoming something that is different and better than where you are now, how you can then just trust that that will land in your lap if you just stay in motion. So I think these are really important conversations, and they're the conversations that all elite business owners and elite athletes and elite musicians and everyone pursuing high performance in life consider and pursue. So if it's good enough for them, of course, it's good enough for us as farmers and parents and all of those things. So wonderful comments. Thank you for exploring this with me. And I think just in finishing, I think it's just such an important reminder that we are not our bank balance and we are not the performance of our farm, and we're not just farmers' wives and we're not just parents. We are all so much more than that. And it's on us to make the time and to make it priority to shift our identity to be something that is more rounded and more balanced and more holistic than perhaps it has been. Tracy, final comment from you, if I could.
I think hopefully from this you realise that you get to choose who you want to be. Just because you describe yourself as one way at the moment, that's the past. So you can become whoever you choose.
Tracy, as always, incredible to connect. Thank you for all the incredible work you do across our community in coaching and all things wellbeing. And thank you, as always, for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jeremy.
Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Profitable Farmer podcast by Farm Owners Academy. If you're new to this show, be sure to follow us. If you've been a long-time listener, let your friends know about us or come continue the conversation in the Profitable Farmer Facebook group. All the best as you grow your business and create your freedom farm. Until next time, keep being incredible.